So, if we remember from our last episode all the challenges that go into making it into Formula One, and the further challenges that are posed once you reach the big time, we can use that as context for the next episode of the Best of the Nine Champions. David Coulthard was born in a small Scottish town into a family that owned a transport company. He admits that he did not initially think of F1 as a career, but was given a gentle push by his father.
Motor racing had always been a part of the family because my father had raced karts until he was 14 when his father passed away. So he had to stop racing. But he always had this passion for motorsport, and as an adult. I was not asking to go racing, but at 11 years old, which is the age you could start racing, my father bought me a kart. It's fair to say I wasn't particularly good at the beginning. I was lapped in my first ever race. But that didn't seem to, that was normal when you're learning. You're racing against more experienced people.
After racing in karts in Scotland for a while and doing well, he decided to test his luck down south in England in more organized and professional karting competitions. Despite his initial struggles, he was able to achieve good results. This led to the choice of racing cars, which he was initially reluctant to do.
But it was always, from my late teens, the plan to go into cars. It was unclear as to whether I could be successful in cars. And actually, I didn't really enjoy the experience of driving cars in the beginning. It was on a bigger track, so it was, it was just an unusual sensation.
Second place and an Englishman leading the Formula Ford Festival. What a scrap. What an incredible drive already, too, by David Coulthard. I've said before and I'll say again, we're going to hear a great deal more from this young man. This is his first year of single-seater racing. He has won both the Junior Formula Ford Championships of Britain, and he's now attacking Dave Coyne. And Dave Coyne, of course, is the toughest, hardest, most experienced man on the circuit. And Dave Coulthard is going to learn a lot from Dave Coyne in this race.
Again, his father helped to push him forward and even started giving him advice on what he needed to do when he reached Formula One, something young David hadn't even imagined for himself.
Did I really believe I could race in Formula One? I didn't not believe it, but I wasn't dreaming of it. I left school and I started a business computing course. I think my father believed that I had the skills to make my way to Formula One, but even then, that's only part of the journey. If you've got the skills, you need to get the money, you need the opportunity, and all that sort of thing. But when I look back, and I remember when I was 14, my father and I were watching the Grand Prix on BBC, and he was saying to me, look, son, when you get to Formula One, I think you should move to Monaco. It would be a short career, so you have to maximize your income. I'm thinking, oh, okay. 10 years later, I'm moving to Monaco. So it was almost like he knew.
He goes on to say that his family, including his father, had major impact on his career success, making him the man he is today, instilling values of hard work, humility, and teamwork.
Work ethic was in the family anyway. My mother was a hard worker, my father's a hard worker. I wasn't the sort of driver sitting on the side waiting for everyone else to prepare the car. So when I see the missed opportunities that I had as a teenager to go out and party and do all those things, I never saw them as missed opportunities because I knew I was getting a special opportunity to go racing and create a career.
After finding his feet, he began to get results in cars, but was faced with another common problem: sponsorship. It is very hard to keep yourself afloat in the junior formulas, as so few guys actually make it to F1, and there is no real profit to be made at this level. He credits father and son Scottish businessman and race car enthusiast David Leslie, Sr. and Jr., with coming in and giving some money. He was also backed by Scottish Formula One legend Jackie Stewart and his son Paul. He won the famous Macau Grand Prix, a common proving ground for drivers that would eventually make it to F1.
And Coulthard has underlined his world championship class, because I have no doubt that this young man, if he can get the sponsorship money he needs for Formula 3000 in 1992, will go on to Formula One. He's only 20 years old, he's got a glittering future in front of him, and he's crossing the line now to start his 15th and last lap, leading here at Macau.
Enjoy, and to win here in Macau obviously is a great experience, because a lot of big names in Formula One have won here in the past. So I thoroughly hope that this can help set me up for the future.
Now surely we must see you in Formula 3000 very, very soon.
yeah, I'm trying to do Formula 3000 next year, and we're working on the budget for that. And hopefully this win here might help me to find some further sponsorship.
He characterized this time as being both difficult but rewarding.
Well, there's no question that it's a hit and miss business. If you hit, then you're on your way to Formula One. If you miss, there's been many good drivers never have the opportunity to race in Formula One because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
During this period, he sacrificed many of the typical things that young people do during their teens and early 20s to pursue a career in motorsport. Once again, despite his success and some sponsorship, he was again in a precarious position. He was running out of money and his results had been up and down. He had made some Formula One contacts, however, and was finally signed as a test driver for Williams. He said, however, this was no guarantee. One major benefit of him signing with Williams was the ability to work with two racing greats, Mansell and Senna. In particular, Senna was a fan of the young Scot and trusted his input when it came to setting up and testing the car, which was a huge boost considering how demanding the Brazilian was. He later said that Senna's positive words about him to the team were what helped him get his race seat at Williams.
From my point of view, being able to compare my data to a driver like that was a real eye-opener. You know, he watched very closely my performance behind the wheel and the first test we did together on Estoril before deciding that, you know, my words were in line with his desires in terms of developing the car. I know subsequently that he told his manager at the time, Julian Jacobi, and also Frank Williams, that he was impressed with my performance and felt that, you know, in the future I deserved a chance in Formula One. And I have no doubt that in the aftermath of Imola '94, a large part of me getting that opportunity to race for Williams was because of his words.
Velocidade, eles vão atingir aos 330 km por hora. Senna bateu forte. Senna escapou e bateu muito forte. Ele vinha em primeiro, escapou.
In May 1994, Senna was killed at the San Marino Grand Prix. Ultimately, the tragedy was Coulthard's gain. His hard work had paid off, and Senna's faith in him was part of what helped him get behind the wheel of an F1 car.
I remember standing in the paddock at Silverstone. I was racing in Formula 3000 and I was watching the start of the Grand Prix on a television there and seeing the crash and thinking that doesn't look good, but not for one moment thinking that Ayrton was dead. And if we remember that death was in the air because of what had happened the day before with Roland Ratzenberger, and I'd received a fax that morning from the team which was signed by Ayrton as well, wishing me all the best for my race at Silverstone. So I felt a connection with what was happening there in Imola, and of course I was the test driver. And then later when it was confirmed he had died, I was shocked. You know, sadly the memory I'll have of working with him, of course, is that it was through his death that my opportunity to race in Formula One came. But you know, I've got very strong memories of the time working with him, and I'll cherish those.
David himself, a fan of making the most of his opportunities, jumped right in with gusto, making his first entry in the 1994 Spanish Grand Prix.
Williams' new boy David Coulthard is an excellent fifth until his car develops a problem in the pit stop. He does get back into the race, he's a lap behind, just as Schumacher and Hakkinen fight over the lead.
He finished the season with some points finishes and a second-place podium at that year's Portuguese Grand Prix. The next year, at Williams, he was first embroiled in a contract dispute after attempting to leave for another team. An arbitrator, however, said the contract was ironclad and he had to stay another year with the Williams outfit. In the end, he turned in an impressive second season and learned some valuable lessons.
Coming to Monza, I was on a roll of pole positions, and it's fair to say in my second season of Formula One there was a little bit of overconfidence and complacency coming into my driving, and going to the grid, coming out of Ascari, warming my tyres, really feeling the car, you know, believing that I was born to win that Grand Prix on that day. I made a mistake and I spun the car in front of the entire field.
And it's a Williams, and it is David Coulthard. Now this is quite incredible. David Coulthard, for whatever reason, has blown his chances of winning the Italian Grand Prix before it even starts. And that means to say, Berry is struggling back onto the line, but even if his car is undamaged, he will have to start from the back of the grid, and that effectively
One
makes
thing that
Michael
motorsport
Schumacher
teaches you,
a
one thing that sport teaches you, is get over whatever disappointment you have immediately, because it's history. You have to work on a solution. Now, luckily for me, there was a red flag at the race start. So if you have a red flag on the first lap of a Grand Prix, then it's not counted as a racing start. So I was able to restart the Grand Prix with the T car from pole position, and I can assure you that was the slowest ever parade lap I've ever done in my career, because there was no way I was going to make the same mistake twice. And I was able to lead the start of the Grand Prix, and I led for 13 laps until I had a front wheel bearing failure, and then I was into the gravel. Yes, it was disappointing, yes, it was embarrassing, but it's a great reminder that you cannot ever become complacent. And my payback from that experience was to go and win the next Grand Prix in Portugal, which was my 21st Grand Prix and my first ever victory in Formula One.
1995 saw him reach third in the Drivers' Championship, not bad for your second year in F1. After leaving Williams, he secured a deal with McLaren, who had been struggling since their dominance in the early 90s with none other than David's former illustrious teammate, Senna. His teammate at McLaren was the Finn Mika Hakkinen, who would later go on to be double world champion. The car for McLaren was not the best and required a rebuilding phase. David also came to learn, following a terrible accident in 1995, Mika Hakkinen and team principal Ron Dennis had built a strong relationship that would cause problems later. With Mika on his deathbed, Ron had kept the faith in him and seen him nurse back to health and regain his position in the team.
Mika was in intensive care and stable until the passing of time. There's just nothing more to be said.
97 saw a return to winning form for David, getting his second and third F1 victories. A new livery for the McLaren car marked a change in fortunes and the beginning of their return to dominance. Additionally, McLaren had signed Adrian Newey to design the 1998 car. In an interesting moment for David Coulthard, he was asked to give up second place in the 1997 European Grand Prix under team orders. Some people have said this is why he was not a world champion.
And Coulthard and Hakkinen, there they are, second and third. I said it was going to be a barnstorming finish, and that is exactly what it's going to be as Hakkinen challenges Coulthard. They're coming up to complete the 66th lap.
Here's a race win here for Hakkinen. He can see it, and Coulthard can see it too, and he blocks Hakkinen on the way into the last corner. Those two having their own private battle, as meanwhile...
Mika Hakkinen goes through and takes David Coulthard.
Coulthard lifted off for sure. Coulthard lifted off. The team must have told him, let Hakkinen through. We think he's faster. For whatever reason, Coulthard had to let Hakkinen through.
Receiving the message to move over, I wasn't in a happy place. But I also think it's very important in a team environment that when the final instruction comes from the senior member of the team, ultimately you have to trust in their judgment. Whilst the driver's there getting the champagne and holding the trophy, there's several hundred people that have all contributed to that opportunity and that success. And the minute you start believing that the success is because of you as an individual rather than you as a team, then you'll very quickly come undone.
1998 and 1999 saw the McLarens return to dominance. Both seasons the World Championships were won by David's teammate Mika. This doesn't mean that Coulthard did not have a strong showing, including victory at his home Grand Prix in 1999, as well as 2 other victories and a plethora of podiums. This is also where the cracks began to show. David felt that Ron Dennis had favored Mika over him, and the usual fight for inter-team supremacy caused a great deal of tension. Reportedly, David badgered Ron so much that finally he admitted he felt a father-son connection between him and Mika following the horrific accident in Australia a few years previous. David finished in 3rd and 4th respectively those 2 seasons. The year 2000, however, was set for David to stake his claim at the title. Outside of his team, the main competition was already 2 times world champion Michael Schumacher. David put up a hell of a fight, taking the title to Michael and grabbing some important race wins along the way, including his first Monaco victory. But perhaps his most famous was a first place in the 2000 French Grand Prix, when he chased down Michael Schumacher lap after lap. In one attempt to pass him, he felt Michael cut him off, at which point he literally put his hand out of the car and gave him both the wanker symbol and the finger. Literally, he stopped driving his race car long enough to slag off his competitor. No matter, a few laps later, he pulled off an amazing passing maneuver and won the race.
Surely, yes he is. And now he's got track position. He'll run Michael out. That was super stuff from Coulthard. He made Schumacher have to lift off, and can Hakkinen make good use of that now? And well, Michael holding his...
It is again. Take us through it, Martin.
So Michael having to cover the outside line. You're not allowed to move twice. Michael knows that, and David also knew that too. And David now thinking, okay, right, you want to play hard with me, tough with me. I'm going to run you to the outside. You're going to have to get off the throttle. And the tyre walls touched on a couple of occasions through there. And I tell you, the Formula 1 cars don't have to look close when you're in that position. But look, they're touching again. Coulthard's rear tyre just...
This effort was not, however, great enough to best the strong Schumacher-Ferrari combo, which ushered in 5 years of dominance. As a side note, just before the Spanish Grand Prix in 2000, David Coulthard survived a plane crash while flying into Nice in France. The plane developed engine trouble and crashed while attempting to make it to a different airport. Both pilots were killed. However, Coulthard, his model fiancée, and his personal trainer survived.
On impact, the plane's wing tanks ruptured and there was a fire on the right-hand side of the aircraft. When the plane finally came to a rest, the front of the cockpit had broken free from the main fuselage. At this point, we established the only way out was through the front, and Andy led the way through the debris. And as this part was 3 or 4 feet off the ground, I followed, to enable Heidi to be able to get down from the aircraft. Once we were all clear of the plane, I returned to the plane to see if there was anything I could do for the pilots, but there was nothing I could do to help.
He then went on to race just days afterwards, finishing second in the Spanish Grand Prix.
Oh, absolutely. You can't have a situation like that which brings you so close to the realities of how fragile we are on this earth, and not have a change in some way. Also felt very close to Heidi beforehand, but I have an increased sense of how lucky I am in my life and what I have. I don't live in the real world being a Grand Prix driver. You know how lucky we are that we get to compete, to drive our cars, and get paid for it. Our hobbies, our passion. And it's made me realise just really the importance of family and friends, and really to. I felt I was pretty focused before, but I feel a renewed focus and a renewed determination to get as much out of every day as possible.
2001 posed another title challenge, this time finishing second in the championship. However, he was still unable to stop Schumacher's ascent to F1 greatness with a second title for Ferrari and a 4th title overall. He did add 2 more wins to his trophy cabinet, but this was perhaps the peak of his career and the closest he ever got to winning the F1 title. 2002 saw a downturn in form, but he did see a second win at Monaco, which David has stated he keeps as a fond memory and a proud achievement of his career.
Performance is no guarantee of future success, but winning here in Monaco is, I think, the most rewarding feeling for any driver. To step up the few steps and be presented your trophy by Prince Rainier, to go to the gala dinner after the Grand Prix and be celebrated as the victor around the streets is unique, and it's a feeling like no other, and it's a memory that above all other memories will stay with me.
In 2003 and 2004 saw a continuing decline in his abilities and perhaps a souring with the McLaren team. As the 2004 season drew to a close, he had no drive for the 2005 season, but David and his focused and hard-working spirit kept him in good stead. He was able to secure a position at Red Bull and helped to build the team into what it is today. He identified who were good and bad members of the team and helped to lure designer Adrian Newey, that he knew from his time at McLaren. Additionally, his many years of Grand Prix experience were invaluable in setting up the car. The old dog still had some tricks up his sleeve and pulled off 2 more podiums before bowing out of Formula One in 2008. In the end, just like Eddie Irvine in my previous video, David Coulthard was a hard-working guy who knew that perhaps he had limitations or he was not the most skilled. He did, however, cover over these deficiencies, if you will, with hard work and a good attitude.
If you look at my career, I never had the qualifying speed and consistency of a Mika or a Michael or a Sebastian. But with everything lined up, I had the due diligence to work hard on setup and motivation to keep pushing with the team. And when everything was aligned, I could beat a Mika or I could beat a Damon or whoever my teammate happened to be, who ultimately went on to win championships. So if at the risk of sounding arrogant, I would say I was good, but not good enough. And therefore, Formula One is not about finding the good drivers. Formula One is about finding the exceptional drivers, as is any sport. I see the Super League that I was never in. Michael, Mika, Lewis, Fernando, Sebastian. These guys were all exceptional talents. So they had speed and they had the consistency to win championships. I didn't have the consistency. I don't know why. C'est la vie.
Since retiring, he has continued to work in TV commentating for the BBC and various other ambassadorial roles. Ultimately, David proved himself to be a hard-working class act who is still involved in F1 to this day. His positive attitude is infectious, and he seems to have little regret for how his career went down, and a desire to keep working, keep busy, and not just rest on his laurels.